What is happening, everybody? It is Monday night, where typically we're doing a baseball live before lock, followed by the NFL live before lock. But guess what? There's no baseball today. And then also the baseball schedule is way different now because we got the playoffs starting. We had the last day of the regular season yesterday. So on the schedule now, we're going to be adding deep dives to the NFL Showdown slate. So Mondays, we're going to have two football shows. Well, really just one extended football stream. So 2 hours now breaking down Monday night and Thursday night football. So we got that on the schedule now. And for today, I cannot be more excited than to break down the slate with Matt Belman at Fantasy Tips Matt over on Twitter, because him and I, we've done a couple baseball shows together, not yet chopped up football. So I'm excited to bring Matt in to talk about some football now. And I don't think, have you done any football shows with us this year, Matt?
No, this is my first football show. So I'm excited to talk some football with you. Excited to get back on here with you, all the above.
All right. Yeah, for sure. We're about to get into that. But as you guys come in, this is a free show. The only thing we ask of you is to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Helps keep our content free, helps support us. We do appreciate it. And also, don't forget about the podcast channel. If you guys ever want to listen to one of our shows on the go, check out the Stochastic Daily Fantasy Podcast channel. Leave us a 5-star review while you are there. One other thing of note as well is that we're sponsored by Owner's Box. And if you guys want to sign up at Owner's Box, there's a good benefit. So you get 1 free week of Stochastic. So all the tools that we have for football, our contest generator, our Sims tool, our player projections, ownership projections, top stacks tools, the single game plays tool, which is really fun and useful to use for single game slates, especially if you guys are hand builders. All of that is included with our football package. 1 week of that for free when you sign up over at Owner's Box. And we got a game tonight between the Giants and the Seahawks, Matt. So first, just kind of like general overview of the game. Who are we picking to win?
I'm picking the Giants, but before I even get into that, I got to ask you, the last time we talked, you had just gotten the bidet, or you had ordered the bidet. So I have to know, how is it being a man of high class now?
It's absolutely fantastic. I've got the cleanest asshole in the business. People have gone from calling me nerd ass Greg to CAG, clean ass Greg. It's been revolutionary. It's fantastic. I've got a clean butthole 24/7.
It's really nice to hear.
All right, there. I don't know what it. Here's a follow up then. What were you hoping my answer to be?
No, something like that. I just wanted to hear if it's been life changing or anything like that. Sounds like it's just been a nice upgrade for you. I have one. It's one that needs to be like harder to put together than yours, it seems. So I have to get the handyman, et cetera, to do it. And it's still sitting in the back of my car.
What's the brand of yours?
I'm not sure. I think it's good though. Like, it's good.
All right. I've got the Tushy. It's pretty good. I like my bidet quite a bit.
I'll tell you, my dad got one and got me one as well. Got us one as well. So when I open it, I'll let you know the brand.
All right. I'm excited to see it. Pictures of everything. I want to see what it looks like. I want to see it installed. I want to see you using it. All the business, Matt. I want all the information. And then we could compare notes and try to figure out which bidet reigns supreme. As we're coming in here, shout out to Chris Williams, our Apple friend. He gifted out 5 YouTube memberships. So thank you very much to Chris, always a big supporter of the show. We do appreciate you quite a bit. And by the way, I'm on the same page as you. I'm picking the Giants to win. And partially, my dad is like the world's biggest Giants fan. And if he knew that in any way I was picking against the Giants, unless it was a game like they're playing against the 49ers or something, he'd be beside himself. So the Giants, picking them to win. It's also a very tight game. I don't think that there's a massive talent difference between the Giants and the Seahawks. I think they're both pretty middling teams. So if you guys were to bet on the game, I do lean towards the Giants, especially with them getting 2 points at home. So Giants is going to be my preferred side of the game as well, which is going to lead into us talking about the quarterbacks for tonight's game, Matt. And only 2 of them to choose from. Not like a main set. We got a whole bunch of quarterbacks. We've just got Geno Smith. We've got Daniel Jones. If a lot of people watch my content that I put up on Twitter or the video I made on YouTube, I think a lot of people might know how I feel about the quarterbacks today, although we're going to talk about it more in depth in a second. For you, though, Matt, between Geno Smith and Daniel Jones, do you have a preference between them? Do you like both of them, or do you like neither of them for DraftKings and FanDuel? Or maybe there's a difference between the 2 different sites. I'm kind of grouping them together because I just view the quarterbacks as the quarterbacks for today across FanDuel and DraftKings.
I definitely like both of them. I definitely like Jones more than Smith. I don't think on showdown slates you always have to play 2 quarterbacks or even any quarterbacks on certain slates. Tonight, though, I think you're kind of pigeonholed into at least playing one. Jones is just too cheap given the prices around him. He was in a really, really tough spot last time out against San Francisco. They've had 10 days off. I think Jones is the clear guy. When I looked at the slate, I was surprised to see him priced under Geno Smith. So I just think he's the guy for me.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because, and by the way, do you play the single game contest? Do you prefer the DraftKings format, the FanDuel format, or do you like them both equally?
I always pretty much prefer DraftKings. This is no different.
Got you. Yeah. So for me, I have been playing Showdown on both Showdown on DraftKings, single game on FanDuel. I do prefer the DraftKings format, mostly because you could find more reasonable ways to differentiate your lineup with the multiplier spot, with it being a different salary. FanDuel, it's easier to make unique lineups in terms of, hey, if you just leave a shit ton of salary on the table and play like a suboptimal captain from a projection standpoint, they're like, yeah, you could have a different looking lineup. The problem though is it's just really easy to get contrarian on FanDuel, even if it's like reasonably contrarian, and just get your absolute ass kicked because of the way that the format is. So I've got lineups built out for both FanDuel and DraftKings, but just wanted to get your perspective on it because you and I have never talked about Showdown for football, really for any sport but definitely not for football either. And
that said, though, just to like add on to my point, I will play DraftKings single game, or excuse me, FanDuel single game. Just like if you're asking me my preference, this is going to sound like such a cheesy cop out answer because at the end of the day, money, but DraftKings is so much more aesthetically pleasing to me that I just tend to go there like over FanDuel no matter what.
Yeah, I don't have so like I do find DraftKings to be way easier to enter lineups on, which is not like the biggest thing in the world, but it is really easy that I could just upload my set of lineups like 150 to DraftKings and then just through the app I could just enter into all the contests I want to play. It's a little bit of a pain in the ass to have to create the CSV and then enter into each lineup individually for FanDuel purposes. So overall, I'm with you. I do prefer DraftKings, but like you said, money's money.
It's like dependent on both. Like yesterday, I played a few lineups on DraftKings, but I liked some of the FanDuel contests. So I played one big lineup on FanDuel. Ended up not doing well, but still played. So
who did you in yesterday?
I didn't have McCaffrey, which really hurt. I had T Higgins, who was not good. Early, it seemed like I was going to have a good day because I had Diggs, I had Derrick Henry. Who else did I use? Josh Kelly was awful again. I got to get off that train. I used him like everywhere too because I liked O'Connell at 4K, who was just very meh. I liked Adams with him, who was not good for his price. Needed McCaffrey. Just overall, didn't feel like I had the right pieces. Not sure it was any one guy. Just don't think I had the right guys together. How about you? How'd your Sunday NFL go?
It was my worst slate of the season so far. I was done in by a lot of. If somebody got injured yesterday, you're damn right I was overweight to the field on. That was just kind of how it went for me. Mm-hmm. It was like Javonte Williams, overweight to him, injured. I didn't end up playing Devontae Adams initially when I was building lineups. So somebody I was going to be super exposed to, but then didn't end up being the case because of Garoppolo getting ruled out. But T. Higgins, I ended up a little bit overweight to him. Like you, also screwed me. He broke a rib. He ends up leaving that game early with an injury. I can't remember. Saw
your tweet yesterday about Devontae Adams. Just like it was right after Garoppolo got ruled out, I think, and you posted the ownership. And to be honest, I didn't even really love Adams, but I liked playing 4K O'Connell, and I just kind of got, I don't even know, my own fault, just comparing him with Adams.
Yeah, which I mean, he was cheap, so I definitely understand that as well. One of the main reasons I'm trying to do this more also is because when I'm doing like a basketball show, right, I'm on live before lock, like I'm bringing the news as it happens. But I realize for me, when I'm doing football content, if I'm recording videos on, like Thursday, Friday, and then I'm doing a tournament show on Saturday, is players will get ruled out. And so much time elapses before people have any kind of, updates from me. And there's sometimes be like, oh, I kind of feel bad that I liked this guy a couple of days ago. And then something has happened to change the situation. So I'm trying to do a better job of trying to present that information on Twitter, which is why when I did the show the other day and Adams was one of my favorite players, that was why I did that thread where I was like, hey, here's the projection change, is why I don't like this situation anymore.
Yeah, for sure. in football, sometimes you just don't really know, and there's nothing you can do about it. But I did appreciate seeing that tweet. I wish I'd listened to it more.
Yeah. Hey, now you know for next time. But you know what's gonna happen the next time. It's gonna be like, hey, I like this guy, I'm off him, and then he's gonna go off and end up scoring like 1,000,000 points after you make your pivots. The way things go.
Naturally.
And by the way, if anybody's watching and you have questions for myself or Matt, throw them into the Discord channel. We could definitely answer those over the course of the show as we're breaking everything down. As for me, this is the case on both FanDuel and DraftKings. My two most rostered players are Geno Smith and Daniel Jones. I'm getting to a ton of them. In the flex spot, I have more of Geno Smith. In the captain / MVP spot, I'm getting more of Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, my most rostered captain on FanDuel. He is my most rostered MVP on FanDuel, my most rostered captain on DraftKings. And I view Geno Smith as being probably a little bit safer than Daniel Jones, and then Daniel Jones being the higher upside player because of his ability with his legs. Now, with that said, these are my two highest exposed players on the entire slate. They're both in the majority of my lineups. I love both of them. But Daniel Jones, I do prefer a little bit more in that captain / MVP spot because of his ability to run the football with his legs. So I'm going to be getting to a bunch of these quarterbacks. I think they make sense on both sites. Anything else you want to add about the QBs for this slate, Matt?
No, just want to reiterate. I think it's, he just faced San Francisco on the road. They also faced Dallas week 1. Two really tough matchups. I know that Josh Dobbs somehow, some way has played well in those spots, but most quarterbacks don't. So we're getting a discounted Jones in a spot that I think the Giants could easily win the game, however you want to put it. I agree with you. Both these teams are pretty middling. Nothing stands out between them. Jones is definitely the guy here, in my opinion.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the running backs. And then after we break down the running backs, we'll put some lineups in the lineup general, see what it is standing out from that standpoint. But talking about the running backs, going to be no Saquon Barkley once again for the Giants. So with Barkley out of the picture, Matt, what do you make of the Giants running backs? Do you like getting to Matt Breida? Do you like Gary Brightwell as a salary saving option? How are you approaching the Giants backfield? But we'll talk about these guys separately, starting with Matt Breida. Priced in like the upper sort of end of the mid-range. Is he somebody that you like paying up for tonight?
I do. I like Breida quite a bit here. And again, saying I like Breida quite a bit is always relative. We're talking a 1-game slate. On a main slate, he's very rarely in play. But on these single game slates, you have to tell yourself a story, especially if you're making minimal lineups. I think the Giants are in this game, winning this game. Breida was the clear leader in backfield touches and backfield snaps last game. He's not very good, but I think the Giants are potentially winning this game late and are feeding Breida. I mean, feeding maybe not, but like giving him the ball more than Brightwell, who I think it's fine to talk about them together just because I wish Brightwell was cheaper. That's all I'll say. Like, he did catch a couple balls last game. He didn't play a lot of snaps though. So that worries me, especially when they were down. I like Breida much more at, he's more expensive, but it's not like they're in completely different price tiers. How do you see it?
Yeah, so in terms of the way that I've built out my lineups, I made 150 for FanDuel and DraftKings. And for me, it's just the easiest way for me to come into shows and approach the slate. Just be like, hey, I built these lineups. These are my results. Therefore, these are the players I like. And I'm overweight to Matt Breida. Matt Breida is projected for about 30% ownership. I have him about 40% of my lineups on DraftKings, and then over on FanDuel, Breida, I have slightly less so, but still 35% of him. He's projected for just a little bit under 30% ownership. And here's the main thing that gets me to Matt Breida here. And earlier in the day, I thought I was going to like Brightwell more. It ends up, as I'm building lineups closer to lock, less so being the case that I'm getting to as much Brightwell. Is I am picking the Giants to win the game. And what is the game script if the Giants win the game? It's going to be Breida on the field, not Brightwell, which I think is kind of in line with what your thought process was. And even though the Giants are underdogs in this game, I still do think that with them at home, they probably win this game a little more often than they lose. And if that is the case, I do think that Matt Breida is the guy to go out and prioritize from the Giants backfield. Now, if you are somebody who's looking at this game and you are very convinced that the Seahawks are going to win, I do think that in that kind of scenario, Brightwell looks a little bit better. He was targeted 3 times last week, so maybe somebody could end up getting 4 or 5 targets out of the backfield. It would be more of a priority play on DraftKings than FanDuel due to the PPR bonus. But when a lot of people are building their lineups based on game scripts, Matt, would you agree that Brightwell would be the preferred option if somebody's building a lineup, assuming the Seahawks win?
100%. If I were like stacking the Seahawks or predicting them to win here, I would have very little interest in Breida, probably much more in Brightwell. I still think he's too expensive though, compared to like some of the cheap Giants receivers, which I like more in that case. But yeah, in that game script, I do like Brightwell over Breida, and the salary discount does help.
And then would you be willing to play them together in lineups, or is that something you prefer to not do with Breida and Brightwell?
If I were playing 150, yeah, I wouldn't like set it as a rule not to have them. I mean, you got to get weird on these showdown slates.
Yeah.
It's not like a preferred option if I'm making, 3-5 lineups, but certainly I have no problem with it. In a 150 setting, I mean, we've seen it time and time again. I mean, the NFL is so unpredictable in terms of like from game to game. Doesn't mean it's not projectable. It's unpredictable.
Yeah, I feel you. And one thing that I've kind of noticed too, and a lot of this is from using our Sims tool and just looking at the post contest sim and looking at some of the previous results from previous games and going through them. One thing that is sometimes kind of funny about Showdown is the options are so limited that you kind of limit your amount of good options if you say like, I'm not going to play these two players together. And then the other thing too, is you find out like, oh, well, if everybody doesn't want to play these two players together, you end up with dupe lineups. And like in a weird way, it could almost be better in some situations to negatively correlate your players in Showdown.
Yeah.
Just because people aren't playing those lineups, and the decrease that it has in terms of correlation, it makes up for in terms of being unique, where it is really hard to reasonably be unique in some of these large field tournaments for Showdown where there's so many dupes.
Yeah, I know Adam's talked about this a lot in Showdown slates. Like the advantage of, playing on a combination that doesn't project as well. Not only does it have merit, it almost is like better than the projections just because of the dupes, etc. Also, it matters like what your game plan is. If you're playing 150, sure. If you're like playing one lineup in like the $100 single entry, I don't think you need to play those two together.
Yeah, totally agree with that. It wouldn't be a single entry play. It'd be more of a large field play where you go with Breida and potentially Brightwell together. Seahawks running back situation. We've got Kenneth Walker and we've got Zach Charbonnet out of the backfield. Now we'll start by talking about DraftKings, and then I'll bring up the FanDuel side of it, because I do think that this is a way different situation across the two different sites. DraftKings, though, do you prefer to pay up for the expensive Kenneth Walker, who is $10,800 on DraftKings, or do you prefer going cheaper with Charbonnet, who is only $3,400?
This is one where I'm going to say neither, but if I have to choose Charbonnet, just because he's so cheap, he's seen increase in snaps each game, so that's encouraging. They took him relatively early. I mean, it doesn't mean anything because all these guys were, but he was obviously really, really good in college at Michigan and then UCLA. So he's got some pedigree. He doesn't like project very well. We have him, I think when I last looked at leverage, yeah, he's coming in like as our like most suboptimal player from a leverage point of view. It's just the price point that does it for me. Like Walker is obviously the guy there. If they were the same price, it wouldn't even be a question. But playing Walker means you're not playing Metcalf or Geno or one of the other guys that I want to play more. So for me, it's Charbonnet just based on how I think this game is going to go. That said, last night I kind of had the same stance on Isaiah Pacheco, and we saw how that worked out. Even in a game that the Jets, who I liked a lot in that spot, like even in a game that they almost won, it was only Pacheco was really good for the Chiefs. So it kind of goes into what I said about the NFL being unpredictable.
Yeah. And then one thing that you said that's really important to me, because particularly if I'm hand building lineups, I do really rely on our single game plays tool.
Mm-hmm.
And we have Charbonnet as, like you said, the most negatively leveraged player, the most overowned player on the entire DraftKings slate. And by the way, also, because a lot of people might not really understand or know what some of the data is that's on this screen and stuff that we look at when it comes to the single game plays tool. This is also based on simulations that we've had on the site for forever, really. And we have it for football. We have it for baseball with stuff like the top stacks tool. And it's basically through simulations, how often are players optimal relative to what their ownership is. And we have Charbonnet as being quite over-owned, whereas on the other side, Kenneth Walker is a little bit under-owned. Not anything crazy, but he is positively leveraged on the slate. So with that in mind, I am getting to a good amount more of Kenneth Walker than I am to Charbonnet, and on DraftKings, at least close to about even with the field and coming underweight to Charbonnet, and just trying to find other players that I like for cheap just because he is negatively leveraged in our data.
I agree with that. And I was going to say this earlier when you said about the single game, top players tool. It's one of the best tools in the industry, right in line with like the NBA boom bust tool, all that stuff, which is just a game changer if you're not using it. I'll counter you though with it's a weird slate in that all the like guys with a positive leverage are really expensive. All the cheap guys pretty much have negative leverage. So there are other guys you can get to that aren't Charbonnet. But like, let's say you play Noah Fant over him. I mean, he's got almost a similar leverage score in -4%. So I think you're almost, I'm not really sure the exact wordage I want to use here, but like you're kind of stuck in a corner. You can't just play all expensive guys.
Yeah. And there are other cheap guys. Once we get to wide receiver, there are some cheap guys that I like there. That's really where I'm finding some of like the cheaper, lower owned guys that I'm getting to. Charbonnet for me on DraftKings isn't going to be one of them. And then on FanDuel, I don't like either of these Seahawks running backs. And it's for different reasons. We've got Kenneth Walker, who is really expensive. He's the most expensive player on the FanDuel slate, Matt. 16,000. Then you got Daniel Jones at 15,500. Saquon also 15,500, but not playing. So what does it matter? And then you got Geno Smith at 15,000. The opportunity cost of playing Kenneth Walker is really high. If you're playing him, it's at the expense of one of the quarterbacks because you can't play Walker, Daniel Jones, and Geno Smith. And we've got the two quarterbacks projected quite a bit higher than Walker. And in addition to that, Walker is still somebody who's fairly popular over on FanDuel. We've got him projected for a total of about 30% ownership at that expensive of a price point. It is really hard for me to get all the way up to Kenneth Walker on FanDuel. So when he is the most expensive player on the entire slate, do you think the opportunity cost is worth it getting to him as opposed to maybe the quarterbacks?
I don't personally. I mean, I think that he'll be lower owned on FanDuel than on DraftKings just because of that pricing. But I mean, I don't like he's the one guy up top I'm probably not playing on DraftKings. Like if I were making one lineup. So certainly on FanDuel. I mean, you could say that like I said, he's going to be lower owned, but he's still going to get a lot of ownership as you just alluded to. So for me, I think the opportunity cost is too high playing Walker up there. I'd rather play either of the quarterbacks.
And then we'll talk about Charbonnet on FanDuel in a second as well. What about taking any flyers on like a DJ Dallas or any crazy punts at running back today? Because, that is something that we will see from time to time in Showdown. And it's not like a one lineup play, but anybody like a DJ Dallas or anything crazy you think is worth getting to, because a lot of times we do see, hey, look, here's the guy who's 0.3, 0.4% owned that fell into the end zone and ends up making a unique lineup for somebody. Is there anything like that stands out to you as potentially being a running back differentiator?
Yeah, I think you mentioned it in DJ Dallas. Like he plays some snaps. We've seen him score before. He's only 200. Our tools hate him. So like they basically have him, under a 1% chance of being optimal, 2% ownership. Or no, sorry, I'm looking at Bobo above him. 0.5% chance of being optimal, 1.5% ownership. Like he's over owned, but at 200, you're not going to find many guys who see the field. So like if you need that salary range, yeah, I mean, it's not going to be the most shocking thing ever if we see at the end of the night the winning tournament team had all studs and then DJ Dallas somehow fell into the end zone or caught two balls or whatever it is. At that price point in a 150 setting, I would definitely have some exposure. I would not be jamming him in, but some exposure, sure.
And some questions, or at least one question anyway, coming in from the Discord. This one is from Sick Mosh. Sick Mosh says, thank you for an awesome baseball season. Killed it with the tools. For NFL, how to use the tools in regards to ownership versus projections versus value. All right. So Sick Mosh, I don't know whether you're asking this question for Showdown specifically or in general, but Showdown is like such a specific gameplay that's way different than anything else, because what you really want to prioritize is building high upside lineups that are unique. And I think the easiest way to try to figure out which lineups are going to be duped, go into the contest generator, build 10,000 lineups. You'll build them. It takes like 60 seconds to build out the lineups. And then you could sort it by dupes to really see which lineups are projected to be duped the most. And that's generally stuff where it's like you want to avoid those kinds of lineups because you could have a lineup of popular players on DraftKings or FanDuel, but if it leaves salary on the table, there's a good chance it's going to be unique in Showdown. What you really want to do is just try to build some of those unique lineups that are not going to be duped a million times, because often what's going to happen is you could win with one of those lineups and the payout is just not as great as if you played a unique lineup. You're only going to get so many of those chances to win a large field tournament in Showdown per year. So that's what I do, is I try to prioritize being unique where I can. And I've really found the contest generator and the Sims tool to be really helpful in terms of identifying some of those, unique lineups for Showdown and single game contests. But for you, Matt, how much are you prioritizing projections versus how much are you prioritizing ownership for one game slates?
A lot. I think that you kind of just said it best. However, whatever your process is, not you specifically, but the you out there, like you have to take ownership into consideration because, like you said, I mean, the main objective in a Showdown slate is to build projectable lineups that are unique. Now, it also, and on any slate, it matters, main slate, afternoon slate, but on Showdown slate, it really matters, like what contest you're playing. If you're talking about entering, one lineup in the $15 or $20 lottery, whatever it is, like it's just a lot different than if you're looking at a main slate, because on a main slate, it's just where you're going to be duped no matter what you do. On this type of slate, like you said, the opportunities to, reach the top of the mountain in a GPP are so few and far between. You don't want to be splitting with like hundreds of people when you do that. It's not the same.
And the other thing too is on some of these slates, if I'm playing 150 lineups, I've had it before where I've come in first place in a tournament and lost money because the lineup that I won gets duped a bunch of times. And then it's ultimately like, oh, cool, I came in first and lost money. I remember there was an NBA slate a year and a half ago. There was a Magic Pistons Showdown. It was supposed to be a 2-game NBA slate. One of the games got canceled due to like snow or something like that. So it ended up being a 1-game NBA slate. All we had to play was Showdown. So I play Showdown for that day, play 150 lineups, come in first place, and lose 50% of my entry fees. So the moral of the story is, especially if you're maxing out contests, that's why it's important to try to be unique, because you could play these lineups where even if they project well, they're ultimately negative EV because it might not be in your best interest, even if they win. So that's what I'm really trying to do on these Showdowns, is just be unique where possible. And the easiest way to do it is leave salary on the table. So I'm looking right now at my top FanDuel lineups, and of the top 150 lineups I have, only like 10 of them use all of the salary. And I have some of them that leave thousands of dollars in salary on the table, which I have no issue with whatsoever. I saw somebody in the YouTube chat asking if there's any kind of rules we set or anything we try to do in terms of salary. Not really specific. I will say on FanDuel, it is very rare that my top lineups use all the salary, just because those are almost always going to be duped in some sort of fashion. But for you, Matt, how comfortable are you leaving salary on the table on 1-game slates, and how much will you be willing to leave on the table?
It's all slate dependent. So like every 1-game slate is its own entity, but you have to be willing to leave money on the table to get different on these slates. I mean, especially like today, when there's a lot of good plays, there's a lot of players in play, and a lot of players project similarly within the same pricing tiers. So like, trying to think of a good example off the top of my head, but like, Isaiah Hodgins and Darius Slayton, like, those two are very similar in price, but if you play Slayton over Hodges, you're leaving 600 on the table. That's just like a minuscule example of, what you have to be comfortable with. Definitely have to be comfortable with leaving money on the table. And you're talking about dupes brings me to, I play a lot of League of Legends, LOL, or DFS. Mm-hmm. There's a ton of dupes in the LOL streets just because there's only so many combinations you can make. And it's often the case that, winning a tournament will result in slightly profiting, breaking even, slightly losing money. And that sucks.
Yeah, and what's funny is I've played a few League of Legends slates this year.
I've seen you in those streets.
Yeah, it's been a minute. So one of the times that I actually so the last slate that I played of League of Legends was a slate where somebody got scratched. There was a starting lineup change. It was like 4 a.m. I was like, I'm never going to catch these. I don't know how often they happen, But it was a thing where it's like, I don't know where to get this news from. So to me, it's like, I'm not going to stay up to play League of Legends every night. You know, like Alex Baker, just DFS monster, obviously, but like he's somebody who was grinding, you know, every sport all the time. It's like he'll stay up till 4 a.m. and he knows where to get like all the different news and whatnot for League of Legends. I don't know any of that shit. So for me, and it could have just been my experience because I did win. Like, I think I played 5 slates of League of Legends. I came in first in one of them. And then it was like kind of like break even on the other ones. And I had this one where there was somebody I was really heavily exposed to that got scratched. And I was like, I don't know how often this happens, but I'm just going to stop playing in case that happens again. Is that something that happens like regularly?
Not regularly, but it does happen. I'm not sure if the slate you were playing was like a Korean slate. So the Chinese leagues and Koreans are different. The Koreans are very anti-gambling, so they release their lineups way late. Not sure that that's what it was. It also could have been like towards the end of the season. There hasn't been LOL in a couple months really because the seasons have been off. The World Championship's coming up soon. So yeah, clearly I know way too much about League of Legends. I still don't even know how to play the game, but I love that it's in the middle of the night. My wife thinks I'm nuts. She hates hearing it like whenever I'm watching it, but I just love like the obscure times it's at. I don't know why I like it. Again, I don't know how to play the game, but I will say there's nothing I can vouch for the tools more than League of Legends. I don't know these players. I'd never heard of them when I started playing. Strictly use the tools, specifically the top stack tools. I mean, it's just, you can literally do that. And it goes to against what a lot of people, always say, you have to know ball, you have to know baseball, you have to know football if you're going to play, etc. I love those sports and I watch them and I know a lot about those sports. But at the end of the day, like the tools are the tools and they know more than I ever will.
Yeah, not only do I know nothing about League of Legends, I'm committed to never learning anything about League of Legends. It's a man has a code for me. It's like I'm never going to learn shit about League of Legends. Well, I'll play it in DFS from time to time. But oh, by the way, we just got the official word that Saquon Barkley is inactive for today. So good to know. It was expected because he was doubtful, and we've been assuming the entire time he wasn't going to play when we broke down running backs. But now we know for sure that it is not going to be him on the field today. Jordan, let's build some lineups in the lineup generator now. We'll see what pops up. And then, by the way, for people in chat as well, you can see how the lineup generator works and how easy it is to use. And it'll build lineups for you. You could upload them direct to the DraftKings and or FanDuel, up to 20 of them on each site. And you could do a couple of fun things with the Showdown. I think this is the most valuable game format for the, by the way, Jordan, Showdown. You clicked on the main slate, I think. There we go. All right. So, Matt, let's do we want to do any kind of game script for this? Because here's what you guys could do in the lineup generator. First, if you're signing up, it's the most beginner-friendly tool we have at Stokastic.com. $14.95 when you sign up for the first time. And for Showdown, it's going to build lineups based on our simulations that are expected to be plus EV. But also, if there's a game script that you are really sold on is how the game is going to play out, you don't have to enter one. You could do a game script where it's just neutral, but you could also do a high-scoring game where both teams score well. It could be a low-scoring game where neither team scores well. Or you could do a kind of blowout scenario where one team gets an up arrow, one team gets a down arrow. Neutral game script matter. How do you see this one playing out? Anything you want to select?
While I think the Giants win this game, I certainly don't think they blow Seattle out. So I think neutral is the way to go here. I just don't think that I don't see a clear talent advantage on either side.
So let's go with a neutral game script then, Jordan Klein. So yeah, just standard projections. And then we'll end up seeing what ends up making it into our lineups as far as some of the ownership goes. And while Jordan is saving some of those lineups, shout out to Chris Williams, who once again gifted out 5 YouTube memberships in the YouTube channel. Chris, always appreciate your support to the YouTube channel. Seeing some people's names turn from not colored to green now. And a lot of people are green in the YouTube chat. A lot of it because Chris Williams gifting people out those YouTube memberships. Exposures here. We are getting to a whole bunch of Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones, our most rostered player overall. And this is DraftKings. I could tell because of what the prices are. So DraftKings, we're getting to a bunch of Daniel Jones, followed by Geno Smith. And yeah, like I said before, those are my 2 most rostered players on the slate. I don't have any kind of issue with that. And then also, if you scroll down, you guys will see some of the captain exposure as well. So our most exposed captain, Daniel Jones, also in line with what I'm playing in my lineups. I said that Daniel Jones my most rostered captain. So we have Daniel Jones in 75% of lineups, and then Geno Smith in 64. If I did that math really quickly there. Anything that's standing out to you, Matt, about these lineups here?
Not really. I think it kind of looks like we expected. It's just like I said kind of a couple minutes ago or a minute ago, I think the Giants win this game, but there's good players on both sides. So you kind of have to pick and choose, if you're playing a small amount of lineups. If you're not, like, I think you want to get exposure to, the guys we've talked about. We haven't touched on wide receivers yet, which I'm sure we will after this. But yeah, we both like Jones the most, and that makes the most sense. One thing I wanted to ask you on, this is for large field stuff. When you're playing like higher dollar, single entry, 3 entry, 5 entry max, whatever, like I always expect the ownership to be just raised a little bit, especially on a guy like Jones here. Everyone sees that he's underpriced a little bit. I don't think that we're going to be the only ones that thinks the Giants, win this game. That said, I think most people pick Seattle here, so that could be working in the advantage of Jones's ownership. But what do you do like for, those type of contests where you think the ownership is rising?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm still inclined to play Daniel Jones. One other thing you guys could do as well, if you're using the tools that we have, like the contest generator, you could go into it and you could give thumbs up arrows to Daniel Jones, which is something you can do if you think somebody's ownership will be different based on the contest you're playing in, which I tweeted about this one yesterday also, Matt. One thing I did yesterday is I built my lineups assuming that Travis Kelce was going to be more popular because of the dumb Taylor Swift narratives. And it kind of did end up being the case. Like, I don't know if you looked at what the ownership ended up being last night, but Travis Kelce was nearly 90% owned on DraftKings, which was higher owned than what his projection was by a pretty wide margin. Same went to FanDuel. He wasn't 90% owned, where I think the Millie Maker is actually 86.4% or something, Travis Kelce. So, yeah, there are dumb narratives sometimes that will inflate a player's ownership. And that is one way that I'll try to adjust for it, is by going into our contest generator and doing that. But is Daniel Jones probably the player in like smaller field tournaments that you are expecting to get the biggest boost in ownership?
Yes, I am. I just think the price tag stands out. I almost wish his price tag with Geno was switched. Him being cheaper makes me think that his ownership will be higher. Now, I don't think it's something I want to like tinker with the tools with, just because I don't know how much higher. Maybe I'm wrong there. There's a lot of variables in play. Real quick, though, speaking of FanDuel and Taylor Swift, you happen to see Travis Kelce's price this weekend on FanDuel?
Yeah, they made him was 87.89.
That's just crazy.
Yeah, it's sweeping the nation. This Taylor Swift with Travis Kelce dating thing. If you go to the NFL's Twitter page, their banner photo is now of Taylor Swift. If you go to the NFL's Instagram page, it's the most cringe thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Their bio on their Instagram page. Have you seen this, Matt? Do you know what I'm about to say?
I do.
Okay. The bio on the NFL, the actual NFL's Instagram page, is the Chiefs are 2-0 since becoming Swifties. That's the NFL bio.
Nuts. Just nuts. It's crazy. We talked earlier about like going to sleep and stuff and not staying up. I actually ended up not watching the rest of the Jets game, but apparently they got hosed hard with the holding call on Sauce, and I did see the one where Jermaine Johnson was being held and didn't get the call. Are you a Jets fan?
No, so it's grew up a Giants fan. My dad's the world's biggest Giants fan. Yeah. Scuba. There's a lot of people who've heard me talk about my dad, Scuba. Big Giants fan. So so for today, it's not like I'm much more devoted to my DFS lineups and whatnot.
Sure.
But still, like, generally I'd prefer the Giants win, especially for my dad's happiness.
As we were talking about before, I definitely get that.
And by the way, a good point too by Obi-Wan in the chat, because people come out of those games and I think they're kind of looking for a certain narrative going into it, when in terms of people like, oh, look, the NFL is going to want the Chiefs to win, which, by the way, they're going to win that game more often than not against the Jets anyway. But that aside, we do have the safety, and Obi-Wan brings up a point that the safety call was BS. It was a little bit BS. It probably shouldn't have been a safety. So the ref calls, they do go both ways in terms of them being shitty at times. It's not like,
I agree. I don't want to sound like I'm like one of those, oh, I think the NFL is going against the Jets type of people. I just saw and have heard that people are like, oh, they got kind of screwed on the last drive, which happens all the time. Like the clearest example I think of is remember the Saints, and I think it was the Rams in the NFC Championship game, and there was the clear as day pass interference, and they just didn't call it. I mean, that stuff happens all the time.
Vikings, I think it was.
Vikings, yes, it was, yes.
Yeah, the Vikings game, and that was like 5 or 6 years ago, and that was actually why, if I'm remembering the timeline correctly, they briefly made it so that pass interferences were challengeable. It was because of that play, and then they ended up doing away with the pass interference being challenged.
Great call.
All right, let's check out some FanDuel lineups here, and I'm kind of interested. Let's do a game script for this one, Jordan, and go FanDuel single game, and go all lineups. But now go to let's say this is a shootout. Let's have some fun. Go arrow up for both teams, Jordan Klein. Both teams.
I could see that.
Because to me, I think this game is live to be a shootout.
Same. I don't think either defense is like that good. Now, I don't think either offense is like that good either. So if it's not a shootout, I won't be surprised. But I think basically any type of game script is live here.
All right. So now we will see what ends up happening. So if you expect, it shouldn't be surprising this ends up happening. If you're expecting a shootout, we get to all of the quarterback exposure, right? If the game's a shootout, if we end up having like a 35-30 game or something like that, you better believe the quarterbacks are going to be involved in the scoring. So in a situation where we give all the thumbs up to the quarterbacks, we're getting to Geno Smith in basically all of our lineups. We're getting to Daniel Jones in basically all of our lineups. And then a lot of people in chat right now are wondering, which wide receivers do we like for the game? Well, you kind of see here which wide receivers we end up getting to in a shootout type scenario. We got to DK Metcalf the most from the Seahawks. We got to Paris Campbell the most from the Giants. And then other pass catching options, Darren Waller from the Giants. A little bit that said, tight ends versus wide receivers. What difference does it make on some of these single game slates with how they are set up? And then not as much of the running backs. A little bit of Matt Breida, 28%, although that is still a little bit underweight to him. But yeah, lots of exposure to the quarterbacks and the wide receivers. And if you guys want to know which are projections and simulations here, which wide receivers are liking the most, kind of have a sense of it right here on the screen. The Matt and I are about to break it down in a second in terms of what we like as well. But don't forget that if you want to sign up for the lineup generator tool, sign up using the link below, less than $15 when you sign up for the first time. Now, let's go ahead and start looking at some of those pass catchers. And we could group the wide receivers and the tight ends together for this, Matt. And we'll start with the Giants side where, there's clearly no number one wide receiver for this team. You got Darren Waller, who on paper should have been the go-to guy coming into the season, but you're starting to get a little bit of the Kenny Golladay vibes in New York with Darren Waller, where it was Kenny Golladay was a big marquee signing by the Giants, kind of burned out quickly. And, not to write him off entirely, but it hasn't gone well to this point. Do you have a pass catcher that you feel comfortable rostering from the Giants today? You're like, this guy's going to have a good game.
I mean, it's got to no, but it's Waller is the guy just because such a small sample size with Daniel Jones in this Giants offense. He's undoubtedly the most established receiver tight end for New York here. I mean, he's been very productive throughout his career. I saw a stat today, which is wild. This is the first time in 20 years, presuming it doesn't happen tonight, that no tight end has reached 100 yards receiving in the first 4 weeks of the season. Just pretty crazy to think that, like in this area of tight end, right? Like no one has done it yet. Now, wouldn't be shocking if Waller does it tonight. I don't expect that. If I had to pick one guy I had the most faith in, well, faith is not a good word, but who I think projects the best and has the most upside, it's Waller.
One thing that does influence that a little bit is we had Travis Kelce miss the game, and we also had Mark Andrews miss a game. So, if both those guys had played all their games this year, would we have seen a 100-yard receiving game? Potentially, and I also think it's reasonable to assume that Kelce maybe wasn't at 100% his first game back where he played a slightly limited snap count. But yeah, I hadn't realized that as the case that we had no 100-yard games from a tight end yet. So could it be Darren Waller today? I will tell you that based on my lineups, do I want it to be? Based on my lineups, I prefer it isn't. I'm a little bit underweight to the field on Darren Waller. So I hope it's not the 100-yard game for him today. As far as the Giants pass catcher, that I overall have the most exposure to, it's funny, it actually is Darren Waller, even though I'm underweight to the field on him. But still it is really hard to find a Giants wide receiver that you can feel like decent about. And that's kind of how the field sees it too, where we've got, and I'll start by talking about the DraftKings ownerships, and we'll talk about FanDuel afterwards. Darius Slayton is the Giants' most popular wide receiver, project for 24.6% ownership. At tight end, Darren Waller's 31.2% owned. As far as relative to the ownership, there's a couple of guys that stand out to me. But number one for me from the Giants is Wendell Robinson for today. Because I do think that of all the wide receivers the Giants have, he is the most talented. He's coming off the ACL injury. So last week was the first time we really saw him in action, but he's getting the extra time off. He's got 10 days of rest now. And even in limited snaps, he was targeted almost every play that he was on the field. So he ends up with five targets, caught 4 of them for 21 yards. If Wendell Robinson, and by the way, there's a very wide range of outcomes when it comes to Robinson today, but I think we kind of want to embrace that when it comes to single game slates. He's only projected for 13% ownership on DraftKings. Wendell Robinson on FanDuel is projected for 11% ownership. So relative to what the field is playing, he's my favorite Giant to get overweight to the field to as far as a pass catcher goes, because I know what the talent is like there. And the Giants are so devoid of talent as far as pass catchers go that I think it's in their best interest to get Robinson into the mix as soon as possible, which I think is why he ran with something like 8 routes last week and he was targeted on 5 of them. So I expect him to be really involved in the passing game throughout the year and for him to get ramped up this week after how they used him last week. Is he somebody you like as a contrarian play?
Yeah, I like Wandale a lot here. I'm a big fan of his. Was electric at Kentucky. I agree with you. I think he's their most, talented receiver. He's certainly not the most polished guy. He's barely played in the NFL, but he's uber talented in a wideout room that doesn't really have those guys. So I'm only playing a couple lineups tonight, or a few lineups. I'm definitely going to have Wandale in one of them. I think he's probably my favorite cheap guy on the slate. I don't feel that much different about him than I do Paris Campbell. I actually think Campbell, if I were just looking for like 6 points, I'd choose Campbell. But I think Wandale has higher upside because, we've seen Campbell for years now. He's just not that huge upside type of guy. So, yeah, I like both those guys. But if I had to pick my favorite, it would be Wandale. So we see that eye to eye.
Yeah, and then Campbell, who's also somebody who's reasonable to get to on DraftKings, only project for 14% ownership. So I'm slightly overweight to Campbell. My set of 150 lineups project for 14% ownership. I got to 18% of them. So certainly a little bit overweight, but Wendell Robinson, having nearly 30% of my lineups, probably the biggest stand that I have on the slate right now is getting overweight to him as a cheap pass catching option. So definitely something that I have a good amount of interest in. A lot of upside.
This is also sorry to cut you off. This is also like where the 10 days off really helps. They didn't play since last Thursday. He had missed a ton of time, like you said, coming off that injury. So, he's probably not going to be he's not going to play a ton of snaps, but I'd be surprised if he doesn't play more than he did last week, which only helps his cause.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is, you just look at the pass catchers and it's a single game slate, right? We have to find where are we going to be different. It's not going to be with the Seahawks pass catchers because Tyler Lockett's projected for 37% ownership. DK Metcalf is 40%. And then you start to look at all right, who do we actually like that isn't popular? There's Isaiah Hodgins, and he's a little bit too expensive for me. Then you've got Jackson Smith and Jigba. I don't love how he's been used this year. Wandale Robinson is somebody who at least has upside. We don't know what his role is, which is almost beneficial. The unknown factor on a 1-game slate. And then we've got Paris Campbell, who's a little bit more of a known entity than Robinson in terms of being he's a steady NFL wide receiver, but doesn't really have a ton of upside. So kind of by default, I just eliminate everybody until I land on Robinson as my favorite contrarian option. But is there anybody else that you like as a contrarian pass catcher from the Seahawks side of the game?
Well, just on the Giants real quick, I do think Hodgins is interesting just because he's kind of priced where he shouldn't be. We talked about Robinson and Paris Campbell, who are cheap options. Hodgins is in the same price range as Slayton and Waller. He's not going to get nearly the love as those guys. He's too expensive. So, in tournaments, I don't think he's a bad play, even though, he doesn't project as well as those other guys. From Seattle, it's really hard to, get different in their wide receivers because they just run such tight routes. It's Metcalf, it's Lockett. We've seen Smith-Njigba like a little bit, but he doesn't have a huge role yet either. I don't think that that's the place to get different personally. I think if you're playing Seahawks receivers, and it's really hard to get away from them, it's Metcalf and Lockett.
Yeah, and I think Jackson Smith-Njigba, I think that he was definitely set back by the wrist injury, which happened.
For sure.
That happened like the first or second preseason game where he fractured his wrist, and it looked like he was going to have to be out for a significant amount of time. He wasn't. He came back, but I still think he's been pretty limited. Hasn't been 100%. It's definitely something that's impacted his production and his playing time to this point. He's a rookie, wasn't able to get fully up to speed entering the season, which then leaves us with Lockett and Metcalf at the top. Of the two stud receivers, who are both going to be decently popular from the Seahawks, do you have a preference between Metcalf and Lockett?
It's Metcalf, but like you said, I mean, they're similar and Metcalf's more expensive. So if you said Lockett, just on ownership also, Lockett's projected to be a little bit lower owned. And it's a toss up for me. You're nitpicking, I think, like really taking a hard stand with either one of these guys. They're both good. I slightly prefer Metcalf. Wouldn't fault anyone for feeling differently.
I have a good amount more Metcalf than I do of Lockett. So in my lineups here, I've got 40% of Metcalf compared to 28% Lockett. Over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I have 31% Metcalf to only 12% Lockett. So both sites, I'm overweight to the field on Metcalf, underweight to the field on Lockett. And historically, I've always been somebody that's gravitated a little bit more towards Metcalf than I have to Lockett. And then also, there's a pretty big projection gap between the two of them for us. We have, let's see. So DK Metcalf projected for 14.96 DK points. We've got Tyler Lockett at 13.11. Metcalf is a little bit more expensive, but I still think that the difference in the projection offsets that. Over on FanDuel, 11.68 fantasy points projected for Metcalf compared to 10.33 for Lockett. So if you guys are in a 1v1 situation, trying to figure out, do I go to Metcalf? Do I go to Lockett? The answer is going to be Metcalf for me. Are there any cheap wide receivers that you are looking at as flyers from the Seahawks you're willing to take a chance on in tournaments? So overall, Robinson's my guy that I'm taking a flyer on in tournaments, and that kind of applies to both teams. But is there anybody that you think falls in that same bucket from the Seattle side?
I think you can like throw Jake Bobo in that bucket, because the other thing about showdown slates, and we've seen this a couple times already this year, is injuries really can affect everything. All of a sudden you get one guy going down, not only does that like really hurt the people that have that guy, but you're probably going to need his backup. Now that's unpredictable, but it puts like all these backups a little bit even more in play. One question or, comment I have about the Metcalf Lockett situation. This is one where we have them really, really close in ownership projection. I would not be surprised. And again, this is just off playing a lot and nuance of playing, that if Metcalf in higher dollar comes in, closer to 60% and Lockett comes in closer to 25, 30%. And at that point, that's where I think like Lockett becomes a really good play. Now, I can't predict that, and I don't know that's going to happen, so I can't really do anything with that, but that wouldn't surprise me. Do you feel similarly?
Yeah, I mean, so we have Metcalf projected for a little bit more ownership, right? Just slightly more. And like you had said before, and this is the same thing, especially for me, like my favorite tournament to play in all of DFS is the $121 single entry on DraftKings for baseball, where you really see the ownership get inflated in certain spots where it's like kind of easy to get leverage. Yeah, I think that would be the case, especially because I do think that in some of those tournaments, you generally get, sharper builds. And just based on the way my lineups are coming up using all our tools, it really does lean towards Metcalf over Lockett. So yeah, I do think it's going to be the case in some of those single entry fields.
Cool.
And anything else that you want to talk about as far as the wide receivers are concerned, or the tight ends for the Seattle Seahawks for that matter?
Are those guys in Fant and Dissly? I think they're both questionable. So like all of a sudden, if they're out or if one of them's out, Colby Parkinson becomes about as good of a 200 guys or 800 guy, whatever he is on a showdown slate as you'll find.
Yeah, so I saved the tight ends like I wanted to make it as late in the show as possible, so we get that, and we didn't get the news, so it is really hard to say. But yeah, both questionable to play. We don't really have that update yet. But the good news is we got double football shows today. We got the live before lock crew right after us, So they're going to get the news while they're on the air, whether Disley's in, whether Font is in, whether both of them are out and Parkinson becomes relevant, because it is a little hard for us to say as of right now. Yeah, I don't see anything. I just searched Twitter again. The last injury news we have is that Saquon Barkley is going to be inactive. Nothing else yet. We don't have the Seahawks inactive. My best guess is those guys are probably going through warmups right now to see how they feel, but I haven't seen any reporters that have gone out and mentioned anything about it. We'll talk about the kickers and defenses here in a second. My least favorite part of all the showdown slates is figuring out the dumb kickers and the dumb defenses. But first, we got a super chat to answer. And then also, I'm going to tell you guys about a great money-making opportunity today, the best one available to you. But first, a super chat from Bobby Bees. He wants to know Slayton and Disley or Robinson and Campbell for a single entry. It's a little hard to say without knowing the status of Disley, but considering that Robinson's my favorite contrarian play on the slate, I'm going to go towards Robinson and Campbell.
If Fant is in, it's definitely Robinson and Campbell. If Fant is out and Disley's in, it's still Robinson and Campbell for me, but it's much closer.
Yeah, so we'll see what ends up happening on the tight end situation for the Seahawks, but Robinson and Campbell for me. Now, let's bring the people the really good news for today. Bet365, they brought back their offer. Here's the deal. You make a deposit, minimum of $10 over at Bet365. You bet $1, and they give you $365 in bonus bets. We're doing our best to break down the showdown slate for you. We're waiting on the Seahawks injury information. We don't know exactly what it's going to be, but here's what I do know. $1 into $365 is the easiest investment that you guys could make today. If you have not checked out Bet365, do it before the deal ends. They had this deal available like 8 months ago or something like that, and then just it kind of went away really quick without really much notice. So if you guys want an easy opportunity to add $365 into your bankroll, sign up at Bet365 using the link below. George's going to be throwing the link into chat as well. The states it's available in: New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, Virginia, Iowa, Kentucky. So they've got both of us covered, Matt. I'm in New Jersey, you're in Ohio. Both our states are on board with the Bet365. You guys live in any of those states and haven't taken advantage of it, now is the time to do it. And if you or anybody you know has a gambling problem, call or text the number 1-800-GAMBLER. Kickers, defenses. Do you have any leans on any of these kickers or defenses for tonight?
Not really. And I'm someone that even in like, smaller field, higher dollar stuff, I'll play defenses when the time calls for it. Don't really see that situation here, aside from always the case. You're hoping for random scores and stuff from a defense, which will make them optimal. I like the offenses more in this game. I don't really want to eat a roster spot with either of the defenses. We have them both coming in with negative leverage, I believe. So it's rare that I'll play like a road defense in a game like this. And I don't love the Giants either in this spot. So not really into the D's here for me. I do like the kicker slightly more, but with D's and kicker, as you kind of like alluded to in your sarcastic nature, like it's just really hard to predict these guys.
By the way, Chad has made it clear, missed this, but a little while ago, the Seahawks did put out their injury report. Missed this. This is my fault. I should have caught this. Missed it on Twitter. Seahawks because I was looking at the Seahawks main account, didn't go to their PR account. Inactives, not on the list is either the tight end. So Disley and Font, both good to go for today.
Yeah, which is kind of what I wanted to see, because if they were both out or something, then I wouldn't say Parkinson's like a must play, but he certainly would want to be in my pool.
Yep, there we go. So got him in. We got that news. My bad for missing it. Didn't get the alert sent to my phone. We've amended the situation. It's all been set. So guys, that is going to do it for Matt and I. Thank you all very much for watching. Shout out to Owner's Box for sponsoring the show. Don't forget, 1 week for free of all the tools we have over at Stokast.com when you sign up at Owner's Box. Stick around. Live before lock, Laufey and Neil going to be breaking down the slate in full. So watch those guys. Good luck tonight.
Blame it on the producer.
Always.
My wife made chili today, and I'm just... It's coming up.
So I haven't had my dinner yet. My wife made some vegetarian meal. We do 2 vegetarian meals each week. That's part of our contribution to society. She made a meal and it smells delicious, but I went down there and she was like, this is either going to be delicious or it's going to be too hot for us to handle, because it's got like habanero peppers in it and stuff. Like it might be, she's never really cooked with habanero peppers, so that'll be interesting.
Is it like tofu?
I don't think so. I don't even think there's tofu in this one. It's like she made a jerk chicken meal that she has made in the past, but instead it's just like rice and beans. And I don't totally comprehend at this point what it's going to be, but it smells good.
All right. Let me know how it is. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Live Before Lock Showdown Edition, your favorite time of the week, or so I would hope. Happy to have you guys with us. Looks like Greg and Matt put in some menial work, getting almost 250 thumbs up. We'll see what we can do there. Not bad, boys. Good show. Just watched it. Happy to have you guys here, though, as always. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Take a single second, atone for your sins. We got 1,600 people hanging here with us. The least you can do, your small contribution to society, is show a little love here on the Live Before Lock show. Subscribe to the channel as well. If you don't, it's fine. I know you're here watching, and that's enough. But anyway, I'm Dave Loughran at Lafayette_D, LOUGHY_D on the Twitters. I've reverted back. I've given up. No more X. Joined by Neil Orfield at PlayerQDFS. Some may refer to him as the Showdown Shaman. What's good, brother? How we doing?
I'm doing great right now. As I'm seeing in chat, a lot of people are predicting that I'm not going to be feeling so great later. Yeah, that's pretty likely. I'm probably gonna eat this really spicy meal, and I'm just gonna down it even if it's too hot, and then it's just gonna hurt my stomach all night. That's probably correct. But for right now, I feel great. I got a beer here. I got a new never tried this one yet. About to drink a pumpkin spiced pistachio cream ale, which I've had the pistachio cream ale, which is good. I've never had the pumpkin spiced version of it.
That feels like a try-hard type of beer.
It does feel like that. No, I agree. I'm 100% with you. It does feel like you already did pistachio cream ale. That was interesting. Now we're pumpkin spicing it. I don't know, but I bet it's going to be pretty good. The pistachio cream ale is good.
I'm sure it's delicious. Don't get me wrong. Scares me a little bit though.
Yeah,
but I'm glad we're hanging out today, Neil. We got a lot to talk about. This is definitely one of the, how do I put this? All right, so last Thursday, it was really tough to build lineup. What game was that last Thursday that you and I did? Now I can't even remember. Was it San Fran and the Giants last Thursday?
No, it could have been Thursday.
That was Detroit and the Packers. Detroit. Yes, it was Detroit and Green Bay. And remember, like that was the guy. Someone was telling me, don't talk about Barkley like he could play today because it never happens. And I was like, yeah, I know what doubtful means. But at the same time, Amari Cooper was doubtful last week. And then I'm like, who was the other guy? It was David Montgomery that wasn't expected to play. And then immediately got ruled in following that later in the morning. But whatever. Remember how hard it was to build lineups as far as like the pricing, because Swift was Jahmyr Gibbs was kind of priced for Montgomery being out in a sense. Yep. Montgomery was 6,600 or whatever it was, ended up smashing 100+ yards, 3 touchdowns. This one, however, you can pretty much do whatever you want to do. There are very few limitations, especially when you consider the Giants outside of Darren Waller at 7K in the flex on DraftKings. You're talking dirt cheap Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, even guys like Darius Slayton are cheap, and Hodgins. None of those guys are going to cost a fortune. So makes for a really interesting game.
It's like the exact opposite kind of slate of the one we had on Monday. I was like, there are no great value options. Like I was playing Marvin Jones in that game. Like it was ugly bad on Monday. It was like there was nobody that I wanted to play who was cheap. This is the exact opposite. Like we have so many good options. Not that many like great at the Stoneman, but like we have relatively inexpensive options. I think this is a great slate to leave salary on the table and get unique and just try to win it all outright.
How about Who Dey Hacker coming in, dropping 20 free Stokastic memberships for the people?
Oh, wow.
It's a man of the people right there. Appreciate you, man. Great stuff. Make sure to say thanks if you got one, because we love that type of support. Good stuff, dude. Thank you. All right. Let's get into this. Eric Adams said you both helped me stay in the positive this weekend. Awesome, man. Love to see it.
Yeah.
I had a couple shots. I had a couple lineups that were close with McCaffrey and Jacobs late on that afternoon slate. Just didn't get enough from those guys real late in the game. Like Vegas had the ball back with a few minutes. San Francisco had the ball back with a few minutes. I'm thinking if both of these guys score, and then neither of them did. But how was your weekend?
So I had the exact opposite happen for me, where I had some really nice lineups, like going into the second half of the afternoon games. I was like, I don't think that I'm going to have I think I'm going to have a winning slate. I actually told my wife, which I never tell my wife, I think I'm going to have a winning slate unless I'm pretty confident in that. I was like, and not like super winning. I was like, I think I'm locked out of like making any significant money, but I think that I'm probably going to win a couple $100. And then Christian McCaffrey just ended me. Like he wasn't in my good lineups. I had 19% McCaffrey. Like I wasn't far under the field, but my good lineups didn't have him. So he crushed me. I ended up losing, I don't know, like $150, something like that.
There's nothing worse than knowing you're over the field on a guy and rooting for him, and then you check your lineups and the ones that had a real shot don't have him.
Yeah,
dude, it's the worst feeling because you're actually rooting for him, and then you realize, like, just say you weren't able to check every lineup, and then you realize like the one or two that had a real shot at winning had none of him and got crushed by him, and that's the reason you lost money even though you're over the field.
Oh, it's Huda Hacker. He just said solo ship to 200K play action. He's the guy who solo shipped for $20,000 last night. Yeah, that is. I love that so much. Just seeing people solo shipping. I've never actually solo shipped anything except for high dollar. What's the word I'm looking for? Where it's a smaller field. I've never solo shipped a huge field, so that is really awesome to see. That was an enormous field to solo ship. So
amazing.
Yeah, congrats on that, Huda Hacker.
Well, let's see if we can help the people ship something tonight. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, man. So, and yeah, congrats again, dude. That's great. And thanks for paying it forward, although unnecessary, but appreciated. So we'll kick it off at quarterback as we always do here. We kind of move through everything, but get into some game theories. It tends to make more sense on a show like this. And we're almost, I need to ask you one more question and then I'm done talking. 500 likes feasible?
What are we at right now?
363.
I feel like anybody who's going to hit the like button has hit the like button by now. I mean, they already had all of the deeper dive to hit the like button. So if you're going to hit the like button, they would have hit it by now. We're not getting to 500.
Yes, we are, dude. Yes, we are.
That's a long way to go. No way.
I love the quarterback. Yes, we are. I love the quarterback position today. And obviously it's a showdown slate, but there's plenty of showdowns where we're not in love with the quarterbacks. But Daniel Jones has the rushing upside. Geno Smith has a great matchup. Look at both sides of this game. Okay. I'll just kind of set the table here. You have, if you have a guy in Geno Smith where the Giants blitz at the second highest clip in the league. They do blitz. They can actually bring a little bit of pressure. However, the offensive line a little banged up and not particularly awesome for Seattle. But at the same time, this secondary is super inexperienced. They've struggled for New York. There's going to be opportunities. A huge bodied receiver in DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. There's going to be some big plays for this Seattle team today. If you want to get into like JSN or Bobo, we can talk about that. Noah Fant, in case you guys didn't know, is active. But the Metcalf and Lockett spots are most intriguing. But then flip to the other side, right? Look at Daniel Jones this season, right? I'm actually going to ask you for a second to surf the game logs for a moment, okay? Normally we wouldn't do this, Neil.
Okay.
But weeks 1 and 3, they got their dicks kicked in, all right? 30-12 loss against San Fran in Thursday Night Football, 40-0 Dallas prime. This is their Giants' third primetime game of the season. What a travesty. Anyway, they get crushed. He throws for basically no yards, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions in those games. They get a good matchup against an Arizona team that does blitz at the heaviest clip in the league, but doesn't generate a ton of pressure, doesn't have a great secondary, didn't have Budda Baker. He throws for 321 yards with 2 touchdowns and a pick, rushes for 59 yards on 9 attempts. Now, I'm not saying the Seahawks are the worst defense in the league, but this secondary's allowed 300-plus passing yards in all 3 games to Jared Goff, to Matthew Stafford, and then to Andy Dalton as well. This is one of these spots where you have to be looking at pretty much everything in the passing game for each team. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely correct. Yeah, that is 100% accurate. Yeah. So starting with the quarterbacks, yeah, both are going to be in a majority of my lineups. Like I'm going to have, I think a majority of my lineups will have both quarterbacks in there somewhere, even though I'm leaving significant salary on the table. It's just so easy to play whoever you want. I'm getting to just a ton of these quarterbacks. I think they both look great. They both have rushing upside. So Daniel Jones, this was, and I think we probably talked about this last week, but I was shocked when I was looking at Daniel Jones rushing stats, over 700 yards rushing last year. Like I knew that he was a good rusher. I did not realize that he had reached like that elite level. So can be played naked in the flex. I probably don't want to play him naked in the captain spot. Like you could, if you really want to, and hope for a couple rushing touchdowns, maybe get that bonus, but he doesn't usually get to like 100 yards rushing. So typically playing him with at least one pass catcher if he's in the captain spot. But you can totally run him out there naked in the flex. I still most of the time will have a pass catcher with him, but you can run him out there naked. And even Geno Smith, I don't think of Geno Smith as being a rushing quarterback really at all, but I didn't realize that he rushed for 21, 22 yards per game last year. So that shows me that he does have at least some rushing upside. If I have Geno Smith in wherever I play Geno Smith, I'm probably playing him with at least one pass catcher. Certainly if he's in the captain spot, but you could theoretically, like I think he's shown enough that you could theoretically play him naked in the flex. Both, yeah, as I said, both look great. Both are going to be in a majority of my lineups. You look at the single game tool, we actually have Geno Smith significantly underowned, 16% captain ownership, 18% optimal in the captain spot, 54% util, 62% chance of being optimal in the util. Looks great from a leverage standpoint. Daniel Jones, same thing, 16% captain ownership, 18% chance of being optimal in the captain, 56% util ownership, 62% chance of being optimal in the util. Both look fantastic. They're two of the best plays on the slate. And I don't think I'm going to cut back significantly. Maybe I'll cut back to not have 100% of both them, but I'll probably have 80 to 90% of each of these quarterbacks, I would guess.
It feels like it, right? Especially given that Seattle's run defense hasn't been bad. Giants run defense hasn't been bad. There's the two secondaries are really a problem, like really an issue. And I think it was Sean V. What's up, Sean? Said that Daniel Jones has sucked in primetime. Yeah, I think he's 0-6 in primetime, if my memory serves me right. I get all of that, but hey, are we really? Is something like that going to stop you from rostering him tonight? It can't. And
no,
you know what? He could go out there and get picked off multiple times. Just means he has to throw more.
Yeah.
It just means he's going to have to run more if they're playing from behind. If this ends up being a 40-0 ass kicking like we saw in week 1, I would be shocked. And then in that case, Daniel Jones gets nothing going whatsoever. But, at home, slight dogs, 2.5, depending on where you're looking. I think I'm with you that both of these guys are highly intriguing today. And not just that, though. Captain or flex, I don't think it matters at all. Like, you're going to be able to build really good lineups with them at captain. You're going to be able to build really good lineups with them at the flex if you're throwing, Metcalf, a Lockett in there, captain, however you want to play it.
Yeah, and we have actually positive leverage on both of them in either spot. So, yeah, you can play either of these quarterbacks wherever you want to.
By the way, 541 likes. Sotek said Neil needs to atone. So
I would if I knew how to atone, I would.
Yeah, just crushed it. Thank you, guys. You're the best. I don't really know how much more there is to say about quarterback. I don't actually think there's a ton of nuance to it outside of like, if I were to pivot this conversation to how weird are you willing to get today from a leftover salary perspective, because I think you can leave a lot on the table if you want, and how weird are you willing to get from a captain spot perspective? That's a broad range of answers that you can give me there. But how would you look at this from who are you actually willing to go to a captain? How far down are you willing to go a captain? And how much are you willing to leave on the table as far as salary goes?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be different for FanDuel and DraftKings. Like the captain question in particular, it's going to change a lot. Because on FanDuel, I'm probably not going to go to like the extremely weird MVP as much as on DraftKings, where you have the salary multiplier. So you can get pretty weird at captain on DraftKings. If you get a cheap guy who puts up 15 fantasy points and allows you to play all the studs, that is viable on DraftKings. I'm willing to get pretty weird. I don't know exactly how far down the list I'm going to go, but let's see. Currently, I have, how many different captains do I have? Looks like I have about 10 different captains, and I'm playing 51 lineups tonight, looks like. And I currently have 10 different captains in those 51 lineups. I currently have one Giants defense captain lineup. So I guess maybe that's as weird as it gets for me. I've got one Noah Fant. I've got a Zach Charbonnet. So these are, I've got some weird kind of players in the captain currently. As far as leaving salary on the table, I don't know that there's a wrong answer to how much you could leave on the table. Because I'm playing so much of the quarterback, I don't see a ton of lineups where I'm leaving more than like 3,000 currently, just looking through what I currently have, which surprises me a little bit. I thought I was going to get more of those, leaving a ton of salary on the table, but that looks like about the most that I am doing right now. With that said, if you are hand building a lineup or you've got a crunched out lineup that is leaving more than that on the table, and you look at it and it looks like a viable lineup, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There are plenty of value options on this slate. There are plenty of options who are cheap. Like look at Jalen Hyatt is 2,000. Is there any reason to believe that Jalen Hyatt can't outscore Isaiah Hodgins?
No, I said it this morning. You can leave like 5,000 on the table by going to Hyatt over Slayton or Hodgins or something like that. And he wasn't targeted last game, but 2 games prior against Arizona, what did he have? Like 2 for 79 or something? You rip off one long touchdown. How many times have we seen that on showdown slates before? This isn't ringing endorsement from you or myself of like, hey, this guy's going to have a huge game. You're not trying to predict who's going to have a huge game. You're predicting what type of build could win it for you and which of these players could get involved and put up a decent spot. And I think that Jalen Hyatt is one of those guys where, you know what it is too? It's just a carousel right now among these guys. Wan'Dale Robinson ran 9 routes last game. He was targeted on 5 of them.
Right.
How ridiculous that is. Targeted on 5 of 9 routes.
That's exactly what I said. I thought was, or what I hoped to happen if I was playing Wan'Dale was, I think he's not going to be out there a ton, but I think he could be targeted heavily while he's out there. So I was happy to see that came to fruition. Still didn't really benefit me all that much. Didn't put up that many fantasy points.
Yeah, but it still made sense. He was minimum salary. Yeah. And if I told you in any matchup, regardless even of the value of the specific target, that a guy was going to get 5 targets at minimum salary, and I guaranteed you that, but the rest of the field didn't know, right? Or let's say the large majority of the field had no idea, and you knew that Robinson was going to get 5 targets, but I didn't tell you what type of target. I didn't tell you anything outside of 5 targets. You're going to smash that every time.
Yeah, sign me up for those 5 targets. Absolutely, at low ownership.
Right. I mean, a lot of times we play guys at minimum salary that might not see a single target or a single touch.
Yeah. And so here's the set on Jalen Hyatt, his 89 air yards, 3rd on the season for the Giants. Now, if you think air yards is that indicative of anything, it's up for debate. I think the extent that we should factor in air yards, but at least shows that like they're looking for him downfield. Like he's the kind of guy who can pay off his $2,000 salary with a single splash play. So I think Hyatt very much in play.
Who are the leaders? What are the leading numbers in air yards for this team?
I would assume that it's Darren Waller. Let me pull that.
No, I know, but I'm wondering what the number, like what the actual air yards are.
Yeah, I know 89 air yards for 3 games is not much.
It's like 2 targets for Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, that is insanely low. Let me maybe numbers wrong. Maybe that was just for week 3, but let me pull it back up so that I can.
No, you're probably right. It's probably for the season, but that doesn't matter. It's fine. That's fine data when you consider that he's only been targeted 3 times on the damn year. And one of them in week 1 against Dallas would have been a first down on a 3rd and long, and he dropped it. Wasn't targeted last week again. So it's don't get excited about Jalen Hyatt, please.
Darius Slayton has 232 areas on the year. Darren Waller 172, and then Jalen Hyatt 89, Isaiah Hodgins 87.
That's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. Look, what do you expect? The unique thing about the Giants isn't that any of these guys are spectacular. It's that none of them are spectacular.
Right.
You know what I
mean? That's exactly right. Like you don't know who's going to get opportunities because none of them are all that good. Like they're all like kind of bad receivers in an offense that I thought was going to be better than it is, frankly. But they've also played 2 of the best defenses in the entire NFL in the Cowboys and the Niners. So like Yeah, and Daniel Jones, as you said, was great in the one game where he wasn't facing one of the best defenses in the league. And I should note, in the game where they got crushed by the Cowboys, it was raining. It was just not good conditions. So yeah, you're banking on one of these guys just being able to get there because of the great matchup. Because Daniel Jones is, I think, still a pretty good NFL quarterback, even though he hasn't looked like it this year. Maybe that's wishful thinking. But yeah, you're not playing these guys because they are immensely talented receivers. But somebody's got to catch the ball, right?
So, yeah, so hopefully someone's got to get targeted.
Yeah,
I'll meet you I'll meet you halfway.
Somebody's got to get the air yards, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, look, it's just one of these spots where I'm happy to take these type of chances. All right. Brandon said the Giants offensive line isn't good enough to throw downfield. Their protection isn't holding up. You're half right. Right. It didn't hold up against San Francisco and Dallas, two purely dominant pass rushes, right? Two of the best in the league. When the season comes to an end, assuming they stay healthy, they'll both clearly be in the top 5 in that category. But in week 2, he's thrown 7 deep attempts on the season. He's completed 2 of them. 4 of those attempts and 2 of those completions for 89 yards came in week 2 against Arizona. Say as much as you want about how bad Arizona is, but Seattle's secondary, despite getting Jamal Adams back today, first time he's played in over a calendar year as well. Let's not, ignore that. This secondary has been tuned up in every matchup they've had this year. They also do not have a good pass rush. So again, I'll meet you in the middle. I'm not saying that this is the best matchup in the world, but Neil, the other 2 primetime games were Dallas and San Francisco. This is the forest cry from those matchups when it comes to pass rush and secondary.
So ARV in chat says, can't be serious if you all think Hyatt going to put up numbers, but hey, do you more money for me? So we're not really saying that. But
he wasn't listening then.
Yeah, he clearly was not listening, because nobody's saying like we think that Jalen Hyatt is going to put up huge numbers. What we are saying is we have Jalen Hyatt at, what is the ownership now? 6% projected ownership. He's got, I think, better odds than 6% of putting up big number, or putting up a score that you want to have in this game. It's not like it's the likeliest thing to happen, but 6% is just a really low barrier. And you're really, as you said earlier, Loughran, you're not really trying to predict the future here. You're trying to put yourself in the best spot for when outcomes happen differently than the field is predicting. You are potentially going to win a lot of money. So it's not that we're saying that we think that Hyatt is likely to put up a huge score. We're saying he's got a shot. Like they're taking the shots there. If one of those shots hits, he can put up a big score in a hurry.
Exactly. And by the way, I don't care about his arm strength to throw deep accurately. If you're getting wide open, I don't care. I'll take those shots. Like I said, 2 of 4 on the deep ball, 89 yards against Arizona. His only 2 deep completions this season came against another bad secondary. We'll take our chances. Plus, it's a showdown slate. Now, when you're talking about these actual wide receivers, Wan'Dale Robinson, how can you make an argument? You can make an argument against Wan'Dale Robinson in the sense that you just think maybe he won't see an elevated snap share, or
right,
maybe he won't get targeted like last game. You can't really make an argument against the fact that he's viable today at his price point when you don't have any clear-cut, undisputed number 1 receiver. Like, if you want to say it's Hodgins or Slayton, be my guest. But there's no AJ Brown, Devontae Adams. You don't even have take a number 1 from a team that's not even a great. You don't have a Nico Collins on this team. You don't have
Nico
anybody.
Collins is great. Oh man, I'm starting to believe in Nico Collins. But yeah, no, I
start believing in CJ Stroud.
That's a good point.
Both of them.
He's making Tank Dell look great. Yeah, good point. He's just CJ Stroud looks legit, man.
Nico too. Don't get me wrong. Nico's looked great, but Tank Dell. I mean, come on, these guys look good. Yeah. Anyway, if you were to rank the receivers for the Giants based on salary and ownership, how are you doing it?
Oh God, this is that's a tough question. All right, let me take a look. Who would I rank number 1 based on? All right, give me one second here. All right, so am I including Darren Waller in this?
Yes, definitely. We have to, because there's no positional requirements here.
Yeah, so it's Darren Waller, number 1. He is the most expensive, just barely. He is also he's getting the most ownership, but I think that is warranted for Darren Waller. Like, he should be the guy who gets the most targets here, I guess. what do you have? 6 receptions in the one game where they didn't play a top defense. I think it's pretty clearly Darren Waller. Actually, yeah, and we actually see positive leverage in the tools for Darren Waller. 8% captain ownership, 9% chance to be optimal, 31% util ownership, 37% chance to be optimal. So we've got positive leverage there. Hard not to have interest in Darren Waller, number 1. Darius Slayton, I would say, is number 2. He leads the team in route participation. 80.6% route participation in week 3 was the highest on the team. He was also second in targets on the team with 6. I think that he has probably the most guaranteed role. Like, I think Darius Slayton is the one guy that I'm like pretty confident that he's still going to have that role out there, be on the field at the very least for the Giants. After that, it gets very, very tricky in a hurry. So we have Paris Campbell and Wan'Dale Robinson. Interesting to see that Wan'Dale Robinson already more expensive than Paris Campbell. So they're Wan'Dale Robinson clearly cutting into Paris Campbell's role last week. Like they both play the slot. Wan'Dale played 100% in the slot last week. I am assuming that he's going to pick up more snaps. Like, is snap count and rep participation going to go up throughout the year? So I think I would say, and at that ownership, so we have them at basically the exact same ownership. That is really tough. Like, I thought I would be able to make some kind of a distinction just based on ownership, like bet against what the field is doing. But we have, let me see, we have Wan'Dale at 12% ownership now. We have Paris Campbell at 15. That is, those two are so close to me. I guess I'll break the tie toward Wan'Dale at lower ownership, but I don't feel super strongly about it. And to your point, like, I don't think that you are playing Wan'Dale because you're hoping for 5 targets in 9 routes run again, like you saw last week or whatever it was. You're hoping that the route participation goes up for Wan'Dale, which I think is a not safe bet, but I think it's a pretty likely thing to happen. So I would say probably Wan'Dale before Paris Campbell.
I put him before Campbell.
Okay, so we're the same page there.
5 receptions. This will come back to bite me. 5 receptions for Paris Campbell. You're happy to get 20 yards. Like, he's straight Alvin Kamara style out there. Did you see Alvin Kamara's receptions and yards yesterday?
It's like 11 for 50 or something like that.
No, 13 for 33.
I misread it. I thought that when I had seen it, it was like 11 for 51. That is, unless you went negative for a couple, that is absolutely absurd. 13 for 33. How does that even happen?
13 receptions for 33 yards. Yeah.
That's
remarkable. I don't even know how that happens, man.
Yeah, that is insanity. And then Jalen Hyatt, as we talked about, I do have interest. Like, he's in some ways more interesting because of the 6% ownership. Like, when you're talking about low ownership, the differences are magnified. Like, the difference between 6% and 13% is different than the difference between 56% and 63%. Like, that's pretty massive difference there. So I'm almost wanting to throw Jalen Hyatt ahead of Campbell and Robinson because of the lower price and the lower ownership, but he's certainly not safe. Like, he's the likeliest to have 0 fantasy points of the group. And then Sterling Shepard, I'm not playing, just not really out there enough to have much of a shot. I guess he ran 1 route last week, so maybe he could hit on that 1 route, but I'm not playing Sterling Shepard today.
Yes, Jojo. I also read that and thought it was wrong when I saw Alvin Kamara, that I actually went to another source to make sure that it wasn't just wrong on the box score before I tweeted about it. Before I tweeted, I was like, let me make sure that Alvin Kamara actually had 13 for 33. I want to talk about Metcalf and Lockett and also these running backs, because the highest price running back, Kenneth Walker, now that Barkley's out, he's easy to get to. It's just, how much of him do we want to get to today? First, let's hit on some super chats. We had one from Jorge. What's up, Jorge? Good to see you, brother. Late to the party, mis amigos, but have to ask. Question on, so JSN and Hodgins today in the flex spot. Yeah, it's fine. Obviously, they're both fine. The only thing with JSN, when you look at that last game, and who knows, that could be a blip on the radar. It might not, it might not carry over week over week. But 44% of snaps to Jake Bobo's 41%. Which, 56 to 24 the game before, 59% to 24 the game before that. So you actually saw a lot closer snap share between those guys last week. Can't say I'm thrilled about that. JSN, as far as all of that preseason hype, and my God, was he hyped up on Twitter. You couldn't open your eyes without seeing that shit. But who knows? Maybe like it's possible as a rookie under Pete Carroll that they continue to develop him and his role expands and expands, or it shrinks. So I don't know. I think he's fine today, but he's not one of my favorite options just based on what we saw in week 3. Maybe I'm overreacting.
Yeah, and so I think I forgot to mention Isaiah Hodgins at all, talking about those New York receivers. He is actually viable. So I said I wouldn't play Sterling Shepard. We had Hodgins playing 56%, ran routes on 56% of dropbacks in week 3. He actually is the one receiver on New York who has a couple red zone targets. So like there are cases to be made for Isaiah Hodgins. I kind of wonder if people are going to so we have him at 11.2% ownership. Part of me thinks people are going to play him more because like they want to spend their salary and he's the most expensive of these receivers. So we could actually see his ownership go up. Maybe that's not a real thing, but that's part of me wonders if we're going to see higher ownership on Hodgins because people want to spend more of their salary cap. But we have him at 11% ownership. I think that's totally fine for Hodgins, for a guy running 56% of routes and seeing a couple red zone targets. That's interesting. And JSN, I mean, we did still have him. He ran routes on 60% of dropbacks last week, 61% of dropbacks last week. So hasn't really done anything that we haven't really seen much to give us hope, but he still was a round 1 rookie playing against a bad Giants defense. So similarly, I think those two are kind of the same bucket for me. Like they're just, they're kind of low ownership. They're not super low. They're both like ownership in the teens. They're both viable. They both like the salaries are about what they should be for them. So yeah, I think JSN, Hodgins both in play, but I'm trying to basically match the field, I think, on both.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense to me. Yeah, you don't need to take a crazy stand there. You definitely don't. Nathan with a super chat, single entry, Tyler Lockett and DK in the same lineup. Absolutely, dude. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't have to, but yeah, if you're getting Lockett, Mech, for all we know, the Seahawks go out there and drop 35 points today. That's what's cool about the lineup generator we have, where you can actually adjust what you project the game score to be. If you think it's going to be a route, you can adjust that, which is pretty cool. I love that tool, and it's for Showdown, it's for main slate and all that stuff. So if you're looking to get in on that, go for it. But guys, I want to get into a couple of things here. Kenneth Walker, I'm going to get into the backfield for the Giants with Matt Breida playing 80+% of snaps last week. I want to talk a little bit about Noah Fant and these guys. We got plenty of time to do so, probably 25 minutes still. But if you tune me out most of the show, you come to listen to Neil's takes, that's okay. I don't blame you. However, if you're in one of these 6 states, just listen to me for 1 minute, and then you can go back to your regularly scheduled listening. If you're in Colorado, if you're in Ohio, if you're in Virginia, Kentucky, just legalize sports betting. If you're in Ohio, not Ohio, Iowa and Ohio, or New Jersey, Colorado, Ohio, Virginia, Kentucky, Iowa, or New Jersey, Bet365 is doing something right now where you bet $1 and you get $365. Now I have people tell me, Laffy, they don't even call me by my name. They don't know me. They're just scoundrels who want to say mean things. They go, scoundrels. Well, this isn't actually $350 because you can't just withdraw it. Yes, obviously.
Like anywhere.
They wouldn't be in business. You're getting $365 in bet credits, which is huge. It's actually better than site credit, and I'll tell you why. Because if you win your bets, your cash immediately becomes withdrawable. A lot of these other spots where you get the $365 when you bet this, you have a significant playthrough, which means you have to play through that several times, and by the time it might be gone. You're betting $1. You're getting $365 in bet credits. $1 in the 365. Anywhere else in the world, this opportunity is offered to you. You jump at the opportunity without question. I put the link in the description. Jordan threw it in chat. If you want to get in on it, Colorado, Ohio, Virginia, Kentucky, Iowa, and New Jersey. All you do, you sign up. Even if you want to wait till after lock and do it during the game, bookmark that link, come back to it. You sign up. Takes a couple minutes to sign up, verify yourself, let them know you are who you say you are. Deposit $10 and bet one of those $10. 10% of those $10, win or lose, doesn't matter. You're getting $365 in bet credits. Now, what I would say, my personal recommendation, just do a wild same game parlay, or not even a wild same game, but just do a wild parlay with massive odds. Because if you don't hit, you're down $1. If you do, you just saw a massive payday plus 365. Check it out. Link in the description and chat. One of those 6 states. Make it worthwhile. It's the biggest win without having to win a damn thing. And you must be 21 years old to gamble. If you were someone you know has a gambling problem, go ahead, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Go ahead and do it, but only if you have a problem, not if you're winning.
You know, they just want to hear from us, just like in general.
I don't think you ever see a winning gambler walk into Gamblers Anonymous and go, "This needs to stop."
Yeah,
this is ruining my life. I can't stop winning.
Yeah. No,
you know,
you only have a gambling problem if you're losing. Everybody knows that.
I mean, it's not
true. It's absolutely true. Yeah,
it's so true. Yeah.
It's like if it negatively impacts your life, it doesn't negatively impact your life if you're winning.
Yep. Anyway, it's a great deal. $365 off $1. All right. So what are you doing with these receivers? We already touched on it a bunch. I don't think you even need to spend as much time on the Seattle receivers. I love Metcalf and Lockett today, but what are you doing with them? And more importantly, some of these, let's say, tertiary options, not named DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett on the Seahawks.
Yeah. So I want to get back to the question about whether you can play them together. I am pretty sure that I have read before that they're negatively correlated. Like when one of them has a big game, almost always the other one does not. So like there is that, but it's a single game slate. So I just want to say I am not doing anything to bucket them out to like say if I have Metcalf, don't have Lockett, or vice versa. But if you wanted to, I guess you could. For me, on a single game slate, I'm not going to make that rule. I think
how much are you worried about a negative correlation on a 1 game slate though compared to a 13 game main slate?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Like you on a 1 game slate, you can't worry about those things quite as much. So I'm not bucketing it out. But because we got the question, I thought I should mention, like, that's probably why we got the question, is these guys have been historically negatively correlated. So it is worth mentioning. Like, I am aware of that, but on a 1 game slate, I think I'm still willing to go there. Yeah, it's interesting. So a lot of like the stats that I look at in terms of like route participation, target share, I believe both favor Lockett, if I am remembering right. Let me make sure I pull this up. I believe Lockett is actually favored in route participation and target share on the season, but DK Metcalf historically does do better against man. Probably going to be facing man defense here against the Giants. So we actually have Metcalf projected better than Lockett, despite Lockett having running more routes and seeing more targets so far this year. We have the higher projection on DK Metcalf. And I think that makes sense given the matchup. Both, of course, look great for us. Metcalf, though, is our second highest leverage play on the entire slate. We have him just basically right on ownership in terms of captain, 11.5% captain ownership, 11.5% captain optimal. But then we have him 42% projected ownership in the util, 51% chance of being optimal in the util. The prices are just kind of too low on both of these guys. Like, given that on Seattle, like, we know who the alphas are on Seattle, and they're not priced up like you would expect them to be. So yeah, both Metcalf and Lockett look fantastic here. Lockett a little bit cheaper. Similarly, like he's projected for about 10% ownership at captain, 10% chance of being optimal. But then we also have positive leverage in the util, 37% ownership, 40% chance of being optimal. I'm going to have a ton of both these guys. They both make a lot of sense. Like, they just project way better, as you would expect. They project way better than any of the Giants receivers. It's much more of a funnel here for Seattle, and they just have more talent. So you want to play Metcalf, you want to play Lockett, have at it. They are the two best receivers on the slate.
What are you doing with Noah Fant today?
Yeah, Noah Fant is interesting. So we've got him at 12% ownership. I think I'm going to end up maybe slightly above the field. I do like Noah Fant. I think that he's healthy. I'm assuming that he's going to be good to go. We have him, as I said, we've got him at 12%. Let me see if that's so we have him at 13% ownership. We only have him optimal 8% of the time. So now I'm kind of rethinking it a little bit. Maybe I don't end up forcing myself to be a little bit above weight to the field. I was thinking maybe I will, but he's kind of in the same boat as like all of these Giants receivers. Like, it could happen. He could score a touchdown. He could surprise us with a few receptions. But there's certainly no guarantee with Noah Fant I have week 1 pulled up. 1 second. Yeah, I think that he's fine. I'm not taking a huge stand on Noah Fant, I guess is what it boils down to for me. I said I'd be a little bit above weight to the field. Now I'm going back on that, but I don't think that I'm going to be like significantly below weight to the field either. I think he's another guy I'm probably about matching the field. 44% route participation so far on the year is not ideal. 10%. Wait, no, it's 9% target share so far on the year on Noah Fant. I don't know. I thought he was going to be so much better when he went to Seattle than he has been. He's just been so underwhelming, and really, there's nothing in his underlying stats to tell me that I should want to play Noah Fant here today. So yeah, maybe I'm going back on him. I think I'm probably going to be at the field or maybe even a little bit below at 13%.
Okay. Yeah, with Kenneth Walker, this is the one spot to me that kind of stands out because on one hand, he's been very good, without question. He's been very good. On the other hand, there is a path where this game just sees a ton of aerial attack and you end up just not needing him. Or Kenneth Walker just has another huge game. He gets all of the goal line carries and he's fantastic. By the way, do you know what opponent success rate is against Seattle's defense in the red zone this year?
Against Seattle's defense in the red zone, like 60%.
So it's only including touchdowns. 100%.
No way. That is insane.
Yeah. I mean, unless I read it incorrectly, teams that have made it into the red zone against the Seattle Seahawks have scored on 100% of red zone trips, which is pretty wild. Really wild.
That's I mean, 3 games in already. Like that's kind of insane.
It is. It absolutely is. But and I'll get to those super chats, guys. Just give me 1 minute here. Let's walk through this Kenneth Walker and Matt Breida thing, and then I'm going to get to all your super chats and questions. I got you covered. What are you doing with Kenneth Walker? Obviously, not are you playing him. Sure, you're going to be playing him, but are you way over the field on him? Are you under the field? Are you getting to a ton of him at captain? What are your thoughts? I
imagine I'm going to be actually, man, closer to the field than I thought I was going to be on Kenneth Walker. I imagine that number is going to come down a little bit. He is not somebody who we have positive leverage on today. Like he's looking a little bit over-owned. The role has reduced a little bit. It looks like we've actually got him over-owned in the captain spot, under-owned in the util. So we have him at 10% captain ownership, 7% chance of being optimal in the captain. We do have him looking okay in the util though, 34% projected ownership, 35% chance of being optimal. His role, like, on the one hand, like you look at last week and it appears that Zach Charbonnet has eaten into his role a little bit. Zach Charbonnet had like nine carries or something last week. He was pretty involved, but like Kenneth Walker still had 18 rushes last week. Like he's going to get rushes and you can rush on this Giants defense. So I'm not going to be fading Kenneth Walker. I'm not certainly going to be significantly above the field. My guess is I end up a little bit underweight to the field on Kenneth Walker, and I'm going to be taking I think one of my bigger stands is I'm going to be above weight to the field on Zach Charbonnet. We don't have him getting a ton of ownership currently. We've got Zach Charbonnet at 12% ownership. Let me see if that's updated in the if that's the same as what we have in the tool. We have him at 12% projected ownership on Zach Charbonnet. He's 3,400. He did get a little bit more work last week. He ran routes on 32% of dropbacks. So that was, he actually overtook Kenneth Walker in terms of route participation last week. So I think that's a promising sign for Zach Charbonnet. He had a season high in terms of carries as well. So there's at least some chance that Zach Charbonnet, and I don't know why they would go away from Kenneth Walker. I feel like Kenneth Walker's been pretty good, but I think there is a world in which we continue to see Zach Charbonnet take on a little bit more work. Snap share up to 43% last week, maybe gets up to 50%, and he's just 3,400. So yeah, I'm going to be above weight to the field on Zach Charbonnet. I'm going to be maybe even a little bit underweight to the field on Kenneth Walker.
Let's hit some of these super chats. Where was this one? Jordan, was the one earlier from Jillian, was that from this show or the deeper dive? Can you figure that out for me if you get a second? Anthony,
I think it was this one. I think I saw it.
Okay. Favorite FanDuel leverage MVP, and do you like Charbonnet? Well, there's your answer on that. Favorite FanDuel leverage play at MVP. And we have a bunch of these. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 super chats.
All right. At MVP favorite leverage play, we have Darren Waller coming in at only 5% captain ownership on FanDuel or MVP ownership on FanDuel. I think that's really interesting. We have him optimal 7% of the time. So I'll go with Darren Waller.
Hockey Freak Sean, is playing Walker at captain going to hurt me? No, I might. I don't know, but it's definitely not a bad play.
Yeah, no, he's totally fine.
Yeah, it's definitely not a bad play. Plus, we have what, very, very slight negative leverage on Kenneth Walker today. We have him as the top projected overall scorer, 10.8% of the time is the probability. Just looking at our single game top plays tool here, Geno Smith and Daniel Jones around 25% each. And then DK Metcalf at 14% top play probability, Walker at 11, Lockett at 9. So yeah, and you guys already know, if you want a free week of all of our tools, including the contest generator, the lineup simulator, ownership, player projections, top stacks tool, premium Discord, literally everything, lineup generator that I mentioned earlier, just use the link in the description, sign up at Owner's Box and take advantage of their $500 first match deposit bonus. Jump in on the fact that they have super flex contests, that the overlay there has been outrageous. Like it's going to overlay. It looks like it's going to overlay again today, but the Sunday slates have been overlaying 30%. They're filling at 75% with 35K up top, $175,000 prize pool in that big contest. You're getting all of our tools for the entirety of the week, 100% free, $10 minimum deposit. Although you get up to $500 first match deposit bonus. Yeah, guys, if you're trying to get access to our tools for the whole week, there's no better time than right now. Because at Owner's Box, you're getting the overlay, you're getting the deposit bonus, and you're getting all of our tools across the board. No add-ons needed, nothing else. Everything you need for NFL all week, every single slate. So check it out if you want. Link in the description and chat. But Michael, is Disley okay since he's basically free? Thoughts on that, Neil?
Yeah, Disley absolutely okay. Even Colby is okay there for the Seahawks as well. I think all three Seahawks tight ends are, none of them are like fantastic plays because there are three of them, but I think every one of them is live to score a touchdown at relatively low ownership.
Okay. And let's go to Corey, captain, DK captain, Lockett. Wait, okay, you're okay. So he's talking about, he's talking about DK Metcalf or DraftKings. DK captain, Lockett flex. He's talking about Metcalf. Or DK captain, leave out Lockett. I don't think there's a right answer to that, Neil.
I don't think there is either. I would prefer to probably leave out Lockett if I have Metcalf at captain. Like I think that's going to hit more often, but you certainly you can't go wrong. There's no right or wrong answer necessarily. But yeah, I guess my preference would be if I have DK in the captain to leave out Lockett.
Tully asks, new to mass entering. Listen up, Neil. You're going to have to pay attention to this one. If I'm putting 75 entries in 150 max and really like somebody that's projected for 25%, should I be at 50% so I have the same number of entries as the field?
No, I mean, I don't think that you need to be necessarily following that logic. So like you're trying to max a 150 maxer. If you have 50%, you are well over the field relative to your exposure. Like you don't need to worry about like what individual 150 maxes are going to
playing
have.
It for your exposure.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think that the logic adds up there to try to just like have as much as a 150 maxer is going to have. You're playing relative to your own exposures. Don't worry about the 150 maxers.
1-2 gave us a free super chat. No question. Well, let's just put it this way. Doesn't seem to be a huge fan of Brandon Katz. Michael, we asked about Disley. Okay, Corey Williams. Random Seattle tight end and New York Giants receiver for the Millie one lineup. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Unless you have any disagreements there. I mean,
totally viable.
Yeah. One of these New York receivers is going to have to do something.
Right, exactly. They're going to be throwing the ball against a bad secondary.
Pretty much, man. That's how I see it as well. Shout out to you guys. Thank you for getting us north of 600 likes. We're at 633 and counting. 700's in play, Neil. Egg on your face again, my friend.
That's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed.
Just looking at the backfield for the Giants, we saw last week Matt Breida got the lion's share of snaps. 82%. Gary Brightwell got 18. Eric Gray didn't see a single snap. He was active, but did not play. I mean, look, logic would dictate that if you're going to this backfield, Matt Breida is going to be the guy. So there is that. But once again, there's really nothing here that's going to get you super excited in the backfield. Now, I will say Last game, while they did get smoked on Thursday Night Football, you saw, and I'm just pulling this up right now. Hopefully this can help you guys out. Week 3, New York Giants. One moment here, please. All right, there we go. So last week, if you're talking about goal line carries or just red zone carries, there was one of them, and it went to Matt Breida. So
yeah, not a great sample size there.
No, not at all. But God, how far out was his touchdown? It must have been, because he did score, right? Yeah, he scored. It must have been from outside. It was okay. It was from inside the 10. Yeah, it was from inside the 10. He did score in that game. Do you like Breida today? Are you going to Brightwell? What are you doing with this backfield?
Yeah, so right now I have about 26% Breida and about 8% Brightwell. Yeah, it's a tough nut to crack there. I don't know exactly what to expect. We haven't seen them rush against anybody but the Niners. Like, can you really take that much away from the usage against the Niners? Certainly, as you said, like we're expecting Breida to be the guy here. I think I'm probably going to end up with about that number. Like, you don't need to go much to be to match the field on, and maybe I'll get a little bit more to get to like try to match the field on Brightwell, but he's also 4,800. I don't know that I need to. I don't know that I need to match the field on Brightwell since he is 4,800 and we have him at 15% ownership. Yeah, I think I'm going to be underweight to the field on Brightwell. And what do we have? Trying to find the updated ownership on Breida. Yeah, we went at 32%. I'm going to be about even weight to the field on Breida, underweight on Brightwell.
Here's a great question from Brandon. Quickly, I wanted to ask you, and you can make this 2 sentences because usually it doesn't take much time. Kickers and defense, just surface level thoughts here. We know how this usually goes.
Kickers and defense always going to project well, point per dollar on a showdown slate. They always look good in our tools. Also, people are always upset when they see kickers and defenses end up in the winning lineup. It happens a lot though, and we have positive leverage on both Gano and Myers. The kickers look a little bit better than the defenses here. Neither of these quarterbacks like throws interceptions at a crazy rate, but we do have banged up offensive lines, things that happen. I think both very much in play. I'm trying to be pretty close to the field, I think, on kickers and defenses.
All right, Brandon Wagner with a question, a super chat, as a matter of fact, that I think can help everybody here with a few minutes to go. We still have over 1,800 people watching with us. Can Jones support 3 wide receivers? And then he said, with 2 Seattle run backs. Now, the reason I say it's a great question, Neil, is because so many of these receivers are dirt cheap. So assuming, he's talking about these Seattle run backs, I have little doubt that he's going to expensive run backs here if you were intending on playing 3 receivers from the Giants. Can Jones support 3 receivers? Traditionally on a main slate, you'd say no. But What are your thoughts on a showdown slate where they're all dirt cheap and they don't necessarily need to have monster games?
Yes. I have at least one lineup here where I have Jones in the captain with 3 receivers in the flex. I'm not grouping anything like that out. I think that it could happen. Like, it could be also a low scoring game where you don't need much from these guys. Maybe one receiver scores the touchdowns while the other guy has, 6 receptions for 50 yards and you don't need all that many points. So yeah, I think that Jones could support 3 receivers.
Okay. How you doing with those lineups?
Haven't submitted them yet. I suppose I should just submit like 1 run now, so I have something in there.
Yeah, I would think so. You got 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Josh of Los Angeles, can you please explain why I smashed Charbonnet? I mean, if you can't explain it, you might have to ask Zach.
Yeah, I mean, increasing role, good matchup, low price tag.
Yes, and by smashing Charbonnet, he's talking about fantasy, guys. Don't be deranged. I think
I missed your joke.
I saw where Jordan's eyes went when he said that. Just sick.
Jillian.
Oh yeah, let me hit your super chat right now. My fault. All right, where are we at? Okay, guys, thanks for what you do. Thanks, man. Best captain for the Millie. Gino, Danny Jones, DK Metcalf. I like Lockett. I don't hate Waller at captain. We have him 8% captain, 9.5% optimal captain probability. Really nice positive leverage. I also think, let's assume they make more trips to the red zone than they did against the Cowboys and the Niners. I think Darren Waller is going to be a fixture in the red zone, assuming they get there. Do you have any contrarian plays at captain?
I mean, I don't think I have anybody that's all that contrarian. Looks like I have a share of Paris Campbell at captain, which I don't love that, but I have a share of Paris Campbell at captain in my latest run. I've got some Charbonnet. I kind of like it. He's fairly contrarian, not getting a ton of exposure at captain. But for the most part, like the guys I'm getting the most exposure to are the guys you'd expect: Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, Kenneth Walker, Metcalf, Lockett. Those are the guys that I'm getting to the most of. And I only have one share of Waller, but I like him in that bucket too.
All right. Dr. Jimmy said, Jordan, you sicken me. I know. We're the ones that have to work with him.
Yeah. That guy every day he sickens me.
It's gross. It's insulting, really. You know me, I toe the line. David Lazowski, it's Laz Gets Fit. Yo, Laz, long time, brother. Appreciate the content. Hey, you weren't here for when we talked about this. Was years ago. Do you know Laz Gets Fit?
The name does sound familiar to me, but I don't think I have ever interacted with it.
Several years ago, in like 2 weeks in a row, he had to have won, $500,000.
Oh shit.
And the lineups, main slate lineups, were like full onslaught stacks, or at least double stacks. I think one was a triple. Laz, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Some people in here have been with us long enough to remember. And then the opposing defense. And just
on a main slate? Oh man.
On the main slate. Yeah.
That's wild. I can't say I've seen that on a main slate.
I think there was like a $250,000 win, a few hundred. There were some monster wins. I love seeing Laz Gets Fit when he's in here. Yeah, we had a good time with that. Actually, at one time we spent probably an entire show on the Monday review show talking about those lineups. It's a good time.
Man, I missed the Monday review show because you could just like look forward to potentially getting your name thrown out there in the Monday review show.
Yeah, exactly. What better way to do it than that, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Hey, I hope you guys have a great rest of the night. Make us proud. Let's go win some money. Come back here. Reconvene on Thursday night.
Let's do it.
And yeah. And relish in the glory of Showdown DFS.
Bears Commanders. That'll be a fun one.
Dude, I forgot about that. Holy shit.
Yeah. That's gonna be
Bears
something.
Commanders. Oh, it's gonna be good. The battle of the broken. That's okay. It's actually going to be
showdown.
I love bad team showdowns.
Yeah,
more than good teams.
Yeah,
more than good teams. We're going to have a blast on Thursday talking about that game.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one.
And you're still, no matter what you think about Fields, you're going to have to play a shit ton of him at captain as well.
Exactly.
Like, you're just going to have to. And it's even crazier now that you have Sam Howell coming off a really nice game against the Eagles.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. You guys are the best. If there's 15 in you here before you leave, get us north of 700 likes. That'd be great. If not, I'm not going to complain. You guys have been good to us today. We'll see you back here soon. Hey, follow Neil at PlayerQDFS on the Twitters. Me at Loughran_D, LOUGHY_D. And despite all of his flaws, we love Jordan Klein. Make sure to say thank you on your way out. We love him for producing this show. We'll see you guys back here soon. Peace.